Breaker, this is the Truck'n Tanker Yanker. I'm 10-8 with my 10 in the wind. My heaters are glowing, my manners are showing. Wind her up and let her go, come on. I'm your travel agent with a story to tell. Let's go for a ride.
How I Got This Way, Part 2. Well, it all started in the beginning. I think it was 1965, and my parents went to the hospital to have a baby. They were deliriously happy because they didn't know me yet. But anyway, and since we're going to talk about transportation and the transportation industry, I better tell you about where it started for me. And it started on the way home from the hospital. That was my first ride in motorized transportation. And you know, I think I was generally in favor of it. I got home.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Hey, this is the Truck'n Tanker Yanker. Welcome back to part 2 of How I Got This Way. Well, I wanted to give you a pro tip right off the bat. Okay, you know when you get up in the morning and you can't do a thing with your hair, or you forgot your hairbrush or your comb and your hair is like sticking everywhere? This is a pro tip for you. This is what we call a truck driver's hairdo. There we go. That's all it takes. Go from bedhead messy to looking ready to hit the town. Now, if you have a lot of hair, now I know my hair's not that long, but if you have a lot of hair, there's a way around that also. Same thing. This is what the pros use out on the road. So this works for office environments as well. If you were to work in an office and you wear a tie every day, just choose a different kind of hat than a baseball cap. Choose something dapper. But if you don't have time to comb your hair in the morning and you're like Dagwood late and you gotta get going, that's this remedy for you. Now if you look at this picture of this young woman right here, I've known this young woman for many years. She's always had trouble with wild, tangled hair. And in this picture right here, she's been in hunting camp for probably better than a week. We have no facilities, no place at all to take care of anything. And look how stylish she looks with this baseball cap on. There you go. That's a pro tip for today. I'll get right back to the story in just a moment. Well, like I said, my parents were deliriously happy because they didn't know me. But apparently about 2 years later, they changed their mind. I don't know what to say, because they had my brother. And I think they were trying to do a do-over. Okay, that's a whole different story. But anyway, so talking about how I got my great truck driving job and how you can get your great truck driving job too, this is the steps you take to get to your great truck driving job. So probably about the time I was 7 years old, my mom let me drive, well, not drive, she let me steer from the passenger seat our 67 Mustang down the egg farm road. Well, the egg farm road was just a mile-long driveway that was gravel. But that was my first experience having control of a vehicle. Well, anyway, and then it was within the next couple of years, I was actually driving the Mustang down the egg farm road. And then I was able to steer on the pavement, which was a country road. We never saw anybody. But nonetheless, I was able to steer on the pavement, which was more of a big boy thing. And then the next step after that, I was about 11 years old, I think, when my dad taught me to drive his pickup, his 66 Chevy pickup, because of the work we had to do on the farm and that type of thing. And it was just easier to have me do that. But there were some hiccups and ups and downs with that as well. I think we had a little narrow strip of asphalt that went near the house. It was dirt everywhere else, but that little narrow strip of asphalt. My dad wanted to know from me why there was a great big black line across his asphalt. It looked fine on either side of the asphalt. Now it's because I pushed all the dirt back together from the burn off. Anyway, he wanted to know how that happened, and I said, I think my foot slipped off the clutch. And he said, you think. Well, anyway, that's a whole nother story, because I think I blanked the rest of that out. I don't even have a memory of that. You know how your body does a self-protective mode and your brain just kind of... Anyway, I think that's what happened at that point. But anyhow, and then around the age of 11 years old, maybe 11, 12 years old, we had a 72 International big truck with a 16-foot stake bed. And Dad taught me to drive that. I had a 5 and a 2 transmission. Not that I ever got to use the 2 or got very high in the 5, and that was because it was just drove around the farm and you didn't hardly get out of first gear. But it made things easier to be able to pile junk on the big truck and move things. And at that time we had cut down a lot of trees, and there was about waist deep in branches for a quarter of a mile. My brother and I picked up. So anyway, that was my foray into driving a big truck right there. Well, drove tractors on the farm and the big truck on the farm, and by the time I was 19 years old, I was working for a dairy. I'd worked from a dairy from the time I was 14 until I was 19. They decided they wanted me to get a chauffeur's license so that I could drive on the highway getting green chop. And I think I explained in the last video that green chop is just basically a field of grass and alfalfa, and we chopped it with a chopper and shot it into the truck, and then we drove the truck back to the farm, and the auger out the side of the truck basically just augered out all that green chop to the cows that were on a lot. So I got my chauffeur's license at the age of 19 for that reason. Might have been 18 actually, now that I think about it. But that was I worked for that farm when I was 18. Well, I got married, and then decided I needed to find a different line of work besides working on a farm, because there wasn't a lot of money involved in that. Found a couple of manual labor jobs, because that was pretty much what I was good at. If you don't have a good head, you might as well have a good back. And that's so I went to these manual labor jobs. Well, one of the guys that worked on the farm with me, he had called me and said, I'm working for this outfit, we deliver roofing. He says, I'm driving a truck for them, but I need a helper. And he knew what kind of work I did on the farm, and that I had a strong back, not a lot of brains, but a strong back. And so he was like, can you come help me, because I need a helper. And we're like competing against each other as to who can get unloaded the fastest and all this kind of stuff. And he says, I need a strong back. So I was like, well, what does it pay? And he's like, $5 an hour. And I'm like, that's easily 5 times what I made on the farm. So I was like, yeah, sign me up. So anyway, I went to be Barry's helper on his truck. Well, after a summer being his helper, when things started to slow down a little bit, the boss, Wade, said, would you like to be a driver? We like to take our good helpers and make them into drivers. And I was a Sharpie, you know. I was very, very erudite and about town. And I said, does it pay extra? And he says, well, yeah, you get an extra 50 cents an hour. And I'm thinking, $5.50 an hour, man. Whoa, sign me up. And I said, what do I got to do? And he says, well, we're going to send you out with our driver trainer, George. George the hippie. Nobody else, he didn't call him George the hippie. We call him George the hippie. To George, we called him George, but he was George the hippie behind his back. And anyway, so I got in the Bravo, and that all the trucks were called by their call signs. We had FM radios in the trucks. And so he had a white Road Boss was his truck, and his call designation was Bravo. And so I got into Bravo with George, and George got a headband on, and his hair wasn't that long, but he did look like a hippie. But scraggly beard, scraggly hair, headband, that type of thing. Got in the truck with George, and he says, so, you want to be a driver? And I go, I just want extra 50 cents an hour. That's what I want. And he says, well, he says, I'll tell you the first lesson right here. Now you have to understand, don't try this at home, because it's not a good thing, all right? I'm just telling you history. That's all this is about history. And this is not the way to get your good driving job, all right? But this is what George did. So he picked up we're headed down the highway. He picked up a Coleman soup container from the floor of the truck, and he handed it to me, and he goes, "Go ahead and fire that up for me." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" It's Coleman soup. I took the lid off his Coleman soup, and it was full of pot with a pipe in it. And he goes, "Load her up." And I'm like, "You sure we ought to be doing this?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah. Anyway, so I loaded his pipe and handed it to him. He's toking away on that thing. And he goes, "You want some?" And I'm like, No, I don't want any of that. And he got a big snoot full. Anyway, all I have to say is, I think that's how I got this way. George is the one that taught me how to drive a truck on the highway. And I'm not sure that everything he said was the right thing. I'm not sure he even knew what he was talking about. He stayed between the lines. He did fine. You couldn't tell hardly a difference. But anyway, that was my first experience in driving a truck. And George, his truck, that White Road Boss Bravo truck, had a 290 Cummins, had a 9-speed transmission, had a 24-foot flatbed on the truck, and when we needed a pull trailer, we pulled a pull trailer. I didn't learn anything about scales and weights or anything like that, because we just loaded her from front to back, and I'm pretty sure we were overloaded all the time. Knowing later, I found out how much roofing weighed, and that that many pallets of roofing was probably way too much to put on that truck. But that was a conveyor truck. It had like I said, 24-foot flatbed with a conveyor that went up the middle of it, and we could turn that conveyor and set it on the roof of houses and buildings and things like that. That was my first truck. And then from there, I got a boom truck on my own, which basically had a boom. I operated a main boom jib with forks on the end. You pick a whole pallet up, stick it over to the roof. I got stories about driving that truck, getting stuck in the mud, hitting an overpass, all sorts of stuff. I can tell you what. But that's for another story later on. Well, from there, from that particular company, learning to drive those trucks, that was when I went after that to a buildings material wholesale and started driving over the road trucks. And I got more stories as far as that goes also. I started off in the warehouse. Back in those days, you didn't just get a driving job because you showed up and had a driver's license. Back in those days, you actually had to earn your spot. And even though I knew the boss of that building material dealer, I grew up with his son, known him my whole life pretty near. He said to me, "Dennis," he says, "just because I've known you all these years doesn't mean I'm going to stick you in a truck. You're going to start on the dock and work your way up just like everybody else." And I did. But if I say any more, I'll just launch into another story. So why don't you catch me next time? Oh yeah, don't forget, please hit the subscribe button for more family-friendly true stories. Me, family, and friendly. Make sure you ring the bell and give her a thumbs up. It's just like blinking your lights and tooting your horn. It's the polite thing to do. Remember now, take it easy and keep the shiny side up and the dirty side down. Make sure you look farther in your hood ornament, and don't be a bumper sticker. It makes you look unprofessional. See you on the flip side. We gone.